Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And today we're going to be judging some judges, which reminds me of one of my favorite tattoos. Only God can jug me.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I mean, this book is going to be fun.
Well, I just feel like God was going through a really rough time. You know, this is around the time he and his wife were splitting up. And he just needed to engage in some self-care. And we all know that his favorite thing is genocide. So, you know, we all need a little genocide now and then.
Well, besides that, there is a lot more to this book. The stories are wild. It's just so every story in it has an element of like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, yeah, that's how I would describe it. Honestly, I think by far it's my favorite book so far. And yeah, I mean, it's a joy to analyze this book.
Yeah,
Well,
this book is crazy.
And speaking about wild
got
stories,
everything. It's got your chopping up of bodies. It's got your genocides. It's got your human sacrifices. I mean, this book's got it all.
Everything. Yeah.
and speaking about wild stories, it's good to start with judges now that Arn just got judged by an ID proponent. Seems appropriate.
Oh, yeah. What they call Evolution News, which is one of the subsidiaries of the Discovery Institute. Some guy I never heard of felt that I was attacking him, and so he decided to say that me and Gutsick Gibbon somehow know less about our fields than he does. Yeah.
And his only expertise or training is in law, yes?
No.
No. I think you're confusing that with somebody else who pretends to have disproved science.
Why is it I've never, ever heard a single creationist speak who demonstrated even the tiniest understanding of what evolution is?
Because they just
don't
it's
wanna.
crazy. They just don't get it, dude. Like, I don't even care if someone believes in evolution or not at this point. If they can properly, like, steelman evolution, I'm fine with that. Believe whatever the hell you want, just steelman the damn thing. Holy shit.
But they can't, because they have no idea what it is. Like,
Right, yeah,
they think it's Flubber / Pokemon / X-Men
This
I
particular guy writes
you say
books
Pokemon?
about intelligent design, so he has a financial reason not to accept evolution, because otherwise he's out of a job.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I asked someone once they told me to explain evolution, and I said, well, let me just know what you think it is, and when I recognize a problem, I'll correct it. And she said, okay, a bunch of molecules gather together and make a man, and another bunch of molecules gather together and make a fish.
Also known as gestation.
Yeah, isn't that what happens for every pregnancy? You'd think with the
Well, it's not really a bunch of molecules. Well,
Whoops, I gave birth to a
everything's
fish.
bunch of monos.
those damn Hox genes.
Okay, so who's reading today?
I suppose I can.
Yeah.
Let's see
Okay.
here. Let's see. Joshua 1. I guess before we get into it, there's a...
Sorry,
There
which
is
book
one
are you
thing-
reading?
Sorry, Judges 1. My bad.
We are in.
It starts with the thing about Joshua. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So in
repetition.
Judges 1, there are a few things that should kind of be covered. So there has been, for a long time, people were like, well, okay, so this was, I mean, there's some debate over this still, whether or not Judges 1 is actually just a later addition to kind of summarize the rest of it, because it contains a lot of similarities with well, first of all, it starts off the same way that that Joshua, the book of Joshua, starts off. So it starts after the death of Joshua, but in Joshua it starts after the death of Moses. So while it might seem initially, and a lot of people have thought this historically, that, well, like, this is just how you start a new book. So this, what I have here, this is Marx v. Bretler's, the Book of Judges. And there has, an argument has been made that this is, we can also compare the original conclusions to the books too, and kind of see how they are quite similar. Like if we check, where is it? If we, once we get to Judges 2, so Judges 2, 6 through 9 is incredibly similar to Joshua 24, 28 through 31. And there are other similarities as well. So
Yeah, and we'll see this
some
in this chapter as well
yeah, absolutely.
with the Nachsa.
Thank you. So as we go through this, it's important to realize that what we will try to be getting to the bottom of is if this is a later edition, or if this is simply like a thematic thing of the Deuteronomistic historian. Now, I think on what it is exactly, this is less thematic in actual text than it is in form. So I think because of that, there is a very good case to be made that Judges 1 is just a later edition. But like if it was more thematic textually, like if it shared more textual motifs, then it would be a closer link to the Deuteronomistic historian. But it's just a very interesting thing to think about. So that's something to keep in the back of our minds.
And that's, I mean, it is certainly easy to visualize if you know, the Deuteronomistic histories were preserved largely intact, but the you know, the priestly source is still trying to stitch things together. You might end up with a bit of a lead-in effect, or trying to put that together, because it's, you know, it's a bit like when the Codex started. They were putting things together that had initially been entirely separate.
I got a comment to read. Fact versus Faith podcast says, Aaron, thanks for answering my questions today. That video was perfect. So I uploaded a video, I don't know, around 4 o'clock this morning that was answering a handful of like staple questions that creationists always ask. And I didn't know, I wasn't sure who had copied and pasted the questions, but I'm glad they appreciated the answers.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so let's get into the reading, shall we?
Sure.
All right, Judges 1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? The Lord said, Judah shall go up. I hereby give the land into his hand. Judah said to his brother Simeon, come up with me into the territory allotted to me, that we may fight against the Canaanites. See, you're kind of already seeing like a division of the land stuff in here. It's kind of neat. Then I too will go with you into the territory allotted to you. So Simeon went with him. Then Judah went up, and the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they defeated 10,000 of them at Bezek. They came upon Adoni-Bezek at Bezek, and fought against him and defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, but they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes.
Lovely.
Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick up scraps under my table, as I have done. So God has paid me back. I'm sure he said that. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. Then the people of Judah fought against Jerusalem and took it. They put it to the sword and set the city on fire. Afterward, the people of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites who lived in the hill country, in the Negeb, and in the lowland. Judah went against the Canaanites who lived in Hebron. The name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba. And they defeated Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai. From there, they went against the inhabitants of Debir. the name of Debir, formerly Kiriath Sefer. Then Caleb said, whoever attacks Kiriath Sefer and takes it will give him, I will give him my daughter Aksa as wife. And Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him his daughter Aksa as wife. When she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. As she dismounted from her donkey, Caleb said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing, since you have set me in the land of the Negeb. Give me also Guleth Maim." So Caleb gave her Upper Guleth and Lower Guleth. Okay. We're gonna
Continue
get
to
back
21.
We're gonna get back to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just say, like,
I was gonna
well,
say.
you could just
Immediately.
translate that bit
Bells.
as
What's up?
well. You could
Yeah.
translate that as, upper springs and lower springs.
Yeah,
Well,
springs
that's
of
how
water,
I
that's
read it.
how-
The translation
the-
I have says that the people of Judah live up where he gave her both the. She said, "Give me also springs of water." So he gave her upper and lower springs. If you hadn't given
Yeah,
them
yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah. So Guleth Maim, it says in here in a note that is basins of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so she wants everything in the kitchen sink.
Don't we all?
2 kitchen sinks, one for meaty, one for milky. Okay,
I'm
good
getting a
Orthodox
strong
woman.
sense of deja vu. Anyone else?
Right. Yeah. Almost right.
Yes, exactly.
The descendants of Hobab the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up with the people of Judah from the city of Palms into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the Negeb near Arad. Then,
Okay,
They
so
went-
all of this is going on in Palm Springs.
almost.
Of course.
Keep
That's
in
a
mind,
great place to picture it.
Yeah.
Then they went and settled with the Amalekites. Judah went with his brother Simeon, and they defeated the Canaanites who inhabited Sephath and devoted it to destruction. So the city was called Hormah.
I should note, just a quick note, in the verse 16 it said Amalek, but in the Masoretic text it said the people, and we'll get to that.
Right, yeah.
I'm
There's
still
also a note on
confused
that.
why the guy's name is Monkey.
Who?
Okay, I'm not
Simeon.
even gonna ask.
No.
Judah
Simeon.
took Gaza.
It is a good question. I don't know why it's Simeon and not Simon, but yeah.
Judah took
Same
Gaza
name.
with its territory, Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. The Lord was
Did
with
he though?
according to this.
We'll get to that.
You'll get to
We'll
that.
get to that. We'll get
Yeah.
to that.
And he took possession of the hill country, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain because they had chariots of iron. Oh, no.
Ah!
Hebron was given to Caleb, as Moses had said, and he drove out from it the 3 sons of Anak. But the Benjaminites did not drive out the Jebusites, who lived in Jerusalem. So the Jebusites have lived in Jerusalem among the Benjaminites to this day.
Mhm.
All right. Should I continue?
No, stop
No?
there.
Okay. You got it.
Ah.
So quite a bit there, right?
A lot
I-
to pack up there.
I get to figure out what it is about the iron that was able to defeat God. Does he have like a werewolf thing with silver, but it's with iron? Is that it?
Well, I will get to that too. So that was actually I covered this in my video on the Heavenly Horseman because it was I'm pretty sure I did because it was pretty crucial, right? Like he couldn't beat them because they had chariots of iron there in verse 19. So this was for the people writing this would have been a fairly new thing in the world around them, and them along with the iron chariots at least they would not have been using ones made of iron. In fact, they were very often said to like, oh, stay away from getting horses from such and such place.
Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt specifically. So there is a lot of talk about what it means to have a cavalry, and from as much as I could tell, it's because so God has his own cavalry, by the way. So we're going to see later on in these visions where God has his own set of horsemen. He has his own chariots, and you don't really need to in those visions, at least, kind of the point is you don't need to worry about these human chariots because I got my own and they're bigger and they're better. They're better than yours. My iron chariot dick is bigger than their iron chariot dick.
My
Your
dad can
chariots are
beat
made
up
out
your
of
dad.
your chariots are made out of cardboard.
So the essential use here of the iron is it's like, yeah, they're very strong, but like eventually in the Deuteronomistic history itself, we're gonna come to see that God has his own. And then in other prophetic texts as well, we're gonna see, God having his own horsemen, and this idea is taken up with, of course, the 4 horsemen in Revelation. But there is a lot to say about the use of chariots and horsemen and divine equestrians in general.
Divine equestrians. I love that.
Okay, so before I'll start my commentary, I should note who are the commentators that I'm using. And Judges is the book with the most commentators I've used, because I thought that this book deserved all all the attention. Yep, Armenia.
We get to use
I-
Hermenia.
Yeah,
So
I also
exciting.
yes. This is by Marcus Smith and Elizabeth M. Bloch-Smith. So I also have it, and I didn't use it on the chapter 1, but I've used it a lot later on. We also have LeYisra'el Amit, who has a book in commentary on Judges in Hebrew, but she also has a book in English called the Book of the Judges: The Art of Editing. If people are interested, Trent C. Butler and Nelson are back. Richard Nelson from Joshua. Very good commentary by Nelson, I think. Also, Butler has some good sources. We have Susan Niditch, who, if people recall, appears in the Satan's Guide to the Bible. And while I think her commentary is decent, although short, she has some wild things to say, and especially when we get to chapter 4. We also have Jacques Sasson, Anchor Bible, Judges 1 through 12. And we have BHQ version, Biblia Hebraica Quinta, for Judges, thankfully, by Natalio Fernández-Marcos. I also have a commentary a compilation edited by Gershon Galil on Judges, but I rarely use it. And of course, the ancient Christian commentaries. And I also have a commentary on the Targum of Judges by W.F. Smelik, in case I'll use it. Again, rarely use it, but still a good source.
If the text
Homer-
itself wasn't wild enough, we're gonna get some midrash as well.
What
Yes.
Tomer is
Oh,
listing,
yeah.
what Tomer is listing or implying here is that we're going to be here till this weekend as he gives his commentary.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
ordering food at some point if I vanish and come back with it. Yeah.
Just to
Love
be clear,
you.
the further we get into the Bible, the more volumes of Hermenia we have, and that just means the commentary is going to get better and better, because
Yes.
Hermenia is the best critical commentary series, just hands down the best. And unfortunately, with this one, it's what is it? Judges
Partial.
1 through 10 or something.
10:5.
Yeah, 10:5. Yeah, so it's only part of the Book of Judges.
Yeah, Sasson's commentary also is partial, unfortunately, 1 through 12.
This right here is a partial commentary.
Yes, exactly.
Hermenia.
I
the
did
most critical
offer
series.
you the offer to marry you for you can come to Canada. I can have access to your library.
That's you know what, I like that idea.
You get human rights. I get reading material. Everybody wins.
Okay, without further ado, I'll start my commentary. First, on verse 1, the Israelites asked the Lord, how did they do it? Josephus in Antiquities 5:120 writes that Phinehas prophesied to the people, and Kara, Ibn Kaspi, and Ditrani suggested that they have used the Urim and Thummim. Amit supports this and writes that the Urim and Thummim were used by a priest, as seen in Numbers 27:11. Similarly, Butler notes that priests typically made such inquiries, as seen in 1 Samuel 22:10. I don't know why I'm mistaken so much. Following a practice of religions worldwide. He also notes that inquiring of Yahweh occurs only in Judges and in Saul's and David's narratives, apparently pointing to an old priestly practice of sanctuaries, which gave way to speaking to God through a prophet. Nelson and Niditch proposed oracular consultation, as seen in Ezekiel 21:26 and 1 Samuel 23:4.
Interesting that you mentioned Phineas, because he's also the answer to where we get later. Is it the next chapter where it says an angel of the Lord or a messenger of the
Yeah,
Lord?
yeah. The references to Phineas according to some
Yeah.
traditional commentators. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah. On verse 2, Niditch comments, the response to the request for an oracle seems to give primacy to Judah. Some therefore suggest a southern or pro-Davidic orientation. It is clear that the composer views Judah as a leader tribe, successful in various exploits, but the chapter may be a comment on the relative homogeneity of the southern population versus the mixed ethnographic composition of northern Israel. The chapter is written from a southern perspective, but not one that is polemically triumphalist. On verse
Excuse me,
3,
can you help me understand triumphal, what? Polemically triumphalist?
polemically triumphalist. That's what she used?
That makes sense. So that was Niditch, right?
Niditch, yes.
Yeah, of course it was. So Niditch has this thing where when she writes, it's almost like it makes sense, but it's almost like word salad. Like she's trying to make it sound like nonsense. And I don't know why. Because like if you like read through, because I read her book on early Israelite religion, and like I didn't disagree with anything in it, but the way that she writes, it's very like Jordan Peterson-esque, where it's like it seems like word salad. You have to like decipher what she's like. Why does she use the words that she does? Like it goes over a lot of people's heads. So you have to like really slowly like read through it and think about it. But yeah, polemically triumphalist makes sense.
It does. A
Triumphalist-
polemic that's focused on pretending that
Triumph
everything
and
is a
that
triumph.
being an
Yeah.
attack. Yeah.
Okay. It's just this is the first time I've ever heard the word triumphalist.
Very niche.
Eh.
Okay, I've got another comment from Vesta Freya, who says, I wonder, since Yahweh started out as a blacksmith in the Bronze Age, I wonder if his weakness to iron chariots is related to transition from bronze to iron.
Well, yeah, it was at a point where they I wouldn't necessarily have called him a blacksmith. He was a Warren Storm deity, but in the very early days. But the fact is, yes, the Israelites were not using iron yet, is the thing. So like while everyone else nearly had transitioned to that point, like we're talking about the Iron Age, the Israelites had they have not started using that. So yeah, they're like, whoa, these things are tough. They are much stronger than what we've been using.
It reminds me of something, though, in the law that, in retrospect, I found a bit disturbing, to be quite honest. There seems to be in the law and in the attitude of the people, written into the text, a hatred for progress. You know, you look at like the farming practices of the Mesoamericans, you've got the three sisters, the squash, beans, and corn, and they grow together. You're not allowed to do that in Judaism. You're not allowed to plant two different crops in a field or weave together two different kinds of fabric. All the things that could make what you are using, what you are working with stronger and better, and, you know, be more natural in the ecology and work to strengths. You're not allowed to do any of that. Everything has to be separate, segregated, and weakened, because nothing is allowed to cooperate. And the same with there seems to be, you know, they were the last dragged into the Iron Age kicking and screaming, apparently. So yeah, it's a
They were dragged into the Iron Age. Now that's conservatism.
oh God, it really is. So
Okay,
yeah,
on,
I just find that disturbing. Yeah.
okay, I'll continue on verse 3 about Simeon. Kara and Ditrani note that Simeon's allotment was part of Judah, as seen in Joshua 15, 26-32, and 19, 1-9. Amit, Nelson, and Gershon Galil wrote that this reflects a historical reality. As Galil explains, during David's reign in Hebron, the tribe of Simeon was included in an alliance between the southern tribes, which David ruled over. After the division of the kingdom, this tribe remained loyal to Rehoboam and was part of the house of Judah, according to 1 Kings 12:21. From an administrative perspective, the Simeonite towns were considered as part of the Negev district of the kingdom of Judah, Hebrew Negev Yehudah. But ethnologically speaking, Simeon was not integrated into Judah, but kept its tribal foundations independent in the frame of the kingdom. Evidence for this is found in its independent activity during Hezekiah's reign, according to 1 Chronicles 4:34-41. Now on verse 5, Adoni Bezek. The name means my lord is Bezek, or the lord of Bezek, according to Josephus in Antiquities 5212 and Nelson. Amit, reading the name as the Lord of Bezek, wrote that it seems odd that the ruler of Bezek was killed in Jerusalem. This led some to suggest that Adoni Bezek is a corruption of Adoni Tzedek, the name of the king of Jerusalem in Joshua 10:1. She writes that this corruption was the result of graphic similarity between the names, or a copyist's interpretation, who understood that Adoni Tzedek is the Lord of Bezek. This, however, is rejected by Fernández-Marcos and Nelson, the former writing that the connection with Adoni Tzedek is, quote, probably too speculative and irrelevant, end quote.
Yeah. Also, Adoni Tzedek is only mentioned once, and the idea that he's like this, what's the word? Lives forever and everything, and he's mentioned in Psalms. That's a much later idea. So it's doubtful that he would be mentioned again here, since he would be long dead.
Yeah, there is another note here. So yeah, it definitely resembles Adonis Zedek, right?
Yes.
So according to Bernie, CF Bernie, the name Adoni Bezek is open to grave suspicion, since nowhere else do we find a Hebrew proper name which describes a man as lord of his city or country, which is the translation that he goes with here. So yeah, he points out the parallels with like Melchizedek, for example, or the names variation with the Jerusalemite figures of Adoni Zedek in Joshua 10:1, and Melchizedek in Genesis 14:18 may have inspired the coinage. But then there's another possibility, and it doesn't really have that much evidence, but this cat is so fucking annoying. But Philip
Guillaume.
Yeah, okay. I was like, I don't know how to pronounce that. Suggested further wordplay. The king's title may mean Lord of the Crumbs, which would then allude to the fact that he had his some fingers and toes cut off, right? So that is also a possible interpretation.
It sounds
But
a
that
bit
one,
like the Beelzebub thing.
Yeah,
You have a
kinda like
polemic
that.
and a twisting of a name. That I could
Okay,
be
I'll
wrong.
continue. Sorry. Yeah, I'll continue on verse 6. Cut off his thumbs and big toes. Gersonides writes that this was to discourage the other kings from fighting against Israel. Reasonably enough, Abravanel writes that this served as punishment for fleeing the battle. They cut his thumbs for not fighting and his toes for he fled with them. Butler writes that cutting thumbs and big toes brings savage and vindicate humiliation, reflecting a widespread ancient custom witnessed in Mari, Persia, Arabia, and Greek sources. He notes that K.L. Younger finds parallels to reports in the Assyrian annals. Shemariah Talmon writes that cutting the toes was a humiliating act, as indicated by the words of the people of Sukkoth to Gidon in 8:6, is the palm of Zebach and Salmuna in your hand. But its primary purpose was to prevent the defeated king from fighting again, and if that king was also a priest, such as Melchizedek, who was a priest to El Elyon in Genesis 14:18, This act may have come to disqualify him from idol worshipping. Compare Leviticus 21, verses 16 to 23, and 2 Samuel 5:6.
Yeah, so on those parallels, right? So there are the other ones in the Bible too, where people are like ordering to cut off body parts of their enemies. But then Assyrians also employed bodily mutilation for psychological effects. Psychological effect is how they put it. Instead of cherub boasts, I cut off their lips and thus destroyed their pride, which would serve to spread the word of Assyrian domination and vengeance. The alleged case of the Athenians cutting off the right thumbs of their oh man, Agamemnon. I don't know.
I think they cut off his thumb.
Military prisoners mentioned, but unsourced in a number of primarily older judges' commentaries, is likewise represented.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost Lawrence.
We lost Lawrence.
Lawrence, come back. Come back, Lawrence.
Oh,
he's
there we
back.
go. He's back.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. This might have been.
Your cat found the router.
I think
You're actually correct. That is what happened.
I think they cut off his thumb as a way to like stop him from opening the door to his prison cell. They didn't use iron. It was suspicious like that, but they didn't have keys. So it's
Yeah,
like, cut his thumb off. He can't open the door.
Actually, interestingly enough, Nelson writes that cutting off big toes makes it difficult for captives to escape.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You're onto something.
It would totally mess with your balance, so it would make it harder to run for your life, like you might do if you were escaping.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I'll continue on verse 7. 70 kings. Rashi comments, from here we learn of the eminence and affluence of the Canaanite kings, for Adoni-Bezek was not worthy of being listed among the Canaanite monarchs by the title king, yet this is written of him, end quote. Sasson writes that 70 evokes completion in the Bible, referring either to a span of time or a collection of human beings. He notes that for some reason, Josephus in Antiquities 5:1-3 increases the number to 72. He further writes, I do not think that the number is selected here to evoke the political council of a once mighty king, according to Bowling, nor should it make us place Adoni-Bezek at Jerusalem rather than at Bezek, according to Lindas. Rather, it is used to convey Adoni-Bezek's sense that he once had control of his whole world, its kings having lost their authority to him. Thumbless, his victims can no longer firmly grasp. Toeless, they cannot keep their balance. And so, in their haste not to lose morsels to other victims, they fed like dogs, using their mouth to pick up food dropped from Adoni-Bezek's table. The image of royalty behaving like scavengers sets us up for the main lesson of Adoni-Bezek's fate. Now, on that same verse, God has paid me back for what I did. If God he refers to Yahweh, according to the Targum at least, then it is a bit odd that a Canaanite would say such a thing. Sasson writes that what is of interest here is whether Adoni-Bezek is attributing to the Hebrew God this dispensation of justice when citing Elohim, rather than Yahweh. He writes, in the ancient Near Eastern literature, it is quite common to find the word neter in Egypt or dingir/ilum in Mesopotamia, God, not God in the capital G God, invoked for a specific, albeit unnamed God, and it should be translated capital G God. In such instances, the verbal form attached to the activity of that God, capital G God, is commonly not plural. In our passage, however, the verb is controlled by Elohim, is in the singular, when a Canaanite ruler should have had little qualm in assigning retribution to his gods, quote unquote. So we must imagine that whether in a moment of spiritual illumination or to elicit sympathy from his captors, Adoni-Bezek is said to confer on the Hebrew God the power to balance justice.
I got to throw something in here. Your pronunciation on the word, what you called albite, I had the same problem when I first discovered that word, but it's actually pronounced as if it were three words, albeit.
Yeah, English.
Right?
Very,
the spelling,
very
right? Exactly. Right. It's
very
one of the
good,
flaws of
language.
English.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing. Matt White comments Tomer. Can you confirm Daniel means God is my judge, and Book of Judges, tribe of Dan, and Book of Daniel have this connection?
Well, Daniel is composed of Dani, I mean, judge, he judges, and El, which means El. So El is judging me. But the Book of Judges, tribe of Dan, and Book of Daniel have this connection. I don't really understand that. Like, is that like the connection
The
between
name?
the
Are you
name?
telling me the name Daniel means God is judging me?
Yes.
Yeah.
God.
I wonder
Or
if
God,
anybody.
God is my judge. No?
Like that's the
God-
thing. Like,
Dani,
Yeah,
I mean,
God is my
he.
God is my judge.
yeah,
No,
yeah. I mean, but it can be God is judging me or something like that.
God is my judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, God is my judgment.
Okay.
I think it's only an incidental connection, quite honestly. It doesn't seem like it would be anything specific and dramatic in that sense.
And
and
then
it's
Minute
important to
Rice.
realize that
Yeah, but
the
also
character might be based on just Danel, which was from I think Ugaritic literature.
Mm.
also the words like Daniel, Dan. This is like judgment, like, and law, and
Yeah.
the judges. The book comes from a different root, which means it's like shofet, which means
Yes.
to like oversee, to judge.
Yeah,
to,
I mean, just to be
what
clear,
other meanings? Yeah.
just to be clear, judges here doesn't refer to like judicial judges. It refers to rulers. So the
Yeah, but
judges here are
the
like
word shofet, and
yes,
like
yes.
that it's similar to the word mishpat, which is means the type of law as well, but it's more referring to like edicts, things that are established, and din and is more like judge, like justice.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But then you've
Yeah.
also got another word that means justice, so it's
And then Minute Rice asks, Aaron, what is the name of that adorable danger noodle? This one is my bull snake Durango.
Hmm.
We can continue.
Okay. Now on verse 8, the men of Judah attacked Jerusalem and also took it. Amit writes that this goes against other passages which state that Judah did not take hold of Jerusalem, like in verse 21 and Joshua 15:63. Joshua 10 does not state of Jerusalem's conquering, and it remained a Jebusite enclave during the Judges period, according to Judges 19 verses 10 to 12, until David took over it, 2 Samuel 5 verses 6 through 9. She also notes that some passages disagree on who the city belongs to. According to Joshua 15:63, Jerusalem belonged to Judah, but in Joshua 18:28 and Judges 1:21, it belongs to Benjamin. She suggested that a Judite editor preceded here to inform that his tribe conquered Jerusalem first. Kimchi writes that this describes the conquest of Jerusalem during Joshua's time. Abravanel, however, rejects this since the conquest of Jerusalem is not told in Joshua. Kara writes that they did not capture the stronghold of Zion, which was eventually captured by David, according to 2 Samuel 5 verses 7 and 9. On verse 10, this verse contrasts with other traditions regarding the conquest of Hebron. One tradition attributes it to Joshua, according to Joshua 10, 36 to 37, who also defeats the Anakites there in Joshua 11:21. Another tradition states that Joshua gave Hebron to Caleb, Joshua 15 verses 13 to 14. Although Amit attributes it to different traditions, Butler notes Younger's opinion that the attempt to see contradictions here goes against normal historical writing, since, quote, credit in battle can be and often is given to individuals, regiments, and or generals. On verses 11 through 15, the story here is almost the exact same story in Joshua 15 verses 15 to 19. The only difference being that Othniel is identified as Caleb's younger brother, although it could be that Othniel was Kenaz's younger brother, according to Vaticanus and Sasson. Nelson writes that the version in Joshua is the source of the story in Judges. Butler writes that the reason for this copying of the story almost verbatim has mostly to do with the literary intention of Judges. He writes, Niditch sees the story following, quote, the traditional pattern that links the fighting of enemies with the exchange of women, end quote. In Judges, she argues that the story becomes a comment on the, quote, serendipitous nature of power and on the capacity of unexpected ones to take control, end quote. The editor must want the audience to read this as a remember when narrative, even though no syntactical markers indicate this. Amit might be right in saying that Judges 1, quote, proves to the reader how important it was for the editor of the exposition to stress Judah's part in the act of conquest, end quote. The tradition already showed a major act by a family connected to the tribe of Judah, and the editor picked this up to remind the audience of that heroic part. As Tammy Schneider puts it, the text focuses on the new situation in Judges, where the focus and answer to the call for leadership is Judah. On verse 16, the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, the Canaanite. The Hebrew Bible reads, the sons of Canaanite, father-in-law of Moses. Septuagint explicitly states his name, though the manuscripts differ on the name. Alexandrius reads Chobav, based on 4:11 and Numbers 10:29. Vaticanus has Jethro in Exodus 4:18. Fernández-Marcos notes Lindahl's opinion to correct the text to read Chobav the Canaanite, father-in-law of Moses, based on 4:11, with Chobav having been lost by haplography. He writes, however, that this is unnecessary, and he quotes from Albright, from all people, quote, Chobav, son-in-law of Moses, was a Midianite belonging to the clan of Reuel and a smith by profession. The apparent contradictions are the result of scribal errors and misunderstandings, and have been further exaggerated by the unnecessary conjectures of modern literary analysts, end quote. Targum has the sons of the Shalmite, who appears in 1 Chronicles 2:54. Chazal identified the Canaanites with the Shalmites, according to Talmud Bava Batra 56a.
So I did actually want to jump back real quick because I just
Yes.
totally missed it. So
Yeah.
for verse 10, right? So on Hebron, so it's commonly identified with Tel Er Rumeda and El Khalil by elevation, the highest settlement in the Judean hills, and so a natural choice for a capital. It was fortified through the early and middle Bronze Ages, and an Akkadian administrative document dating to the late Middle Bronze mentions a king in association with the transfer of domesticated herd animals. The town appears to have been abandoned from the late Bronze Age until an unfortified settlement was founded in the 12th or 11th century. After flourishing through the 10th and 9th centuries, Hebron declined but continued until its destruction by the Babylonians in the early 6th century. Based on this evidence, a story of the captured Canaanite town and massacred population may have been based on the Middle Bronze Age ruins or the abandoned Late Bronze Age site. The name of Hebron may be related to the Mari Akkadian noun Hebrum, meaning not so much clan or tribe as mobile tribal population. Thus, the place name might be suggestive of a place of such a mobile tribal population. And
Like
then,
a floating city, like a Bedouin floating city kind of
kind
a
of
vibe.
Bedouin-like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, moving around. That's still a big deal.
Right, yeah. And then for the stuff on Othniel, which, yeah, I just totally should have added that a little bit earlier when we did that. So the narrative introduces Othniel, meaning El is my guardian, potentially, as the very first leader by whom Yahweh saves Israel in 3:9. The patronymic of Othniel, son of Kenaz, also appears in 3:9 and 11, as well as Joshua 15:7 and 1 Chronicles 4:13. According to Genesis 15, the Kenazites are among the prior inhabitants of the land. Kenaz is also the name of an Edomite clan in Genesis. In Judges, Kenaz is considered a Judite name, as Othniel is Caleb's younger brother. At least according to one tradition, right?
Yeah.
From which you did cover. From
Yeah.
this information, Baruch Levine summarized that the Kenazites were not targeted for subjugation by the conquering Israelites, but rather joined forces with the Israelites, more particularly with the clans of Judah in gaining sovereignty over southern Canaan and the central hill country in the region of Hebron, as recounted in Joshua 14 through 15 and Judges 1 and 3. And then once we get to the continuation of, who Othniel is. Oh man, I must have missed it.
Joshua's
I
daughter.
should have noted it. Either way, yeah, we can continue while I
Yeah.
try to find it.
Well, I mean, Joshua just died, and we retell this story for some reason. But yeah, with
You
some
mean that he was-
adaptations.
You mean that it was his younger brother or Caleb's younger brother? Is that it? Or
Yeah,
that-
it was something on the younger brother thing. I just
Yeah. It's in verse 12. No, it's not. No, verse 13. And I covered it already. I mean,
I know you
Oh,
did.
yeah.
I know. I was just hopping back to it.
Okay. I'll come back to the verse 16.
Yeah.
City of palms. This is usually identified as Jericho, seen in Deuteronomy 34:3 and 2 Chronicles 28:15, followed by Targum, traditional commentators, Butler, Sasson, and Niditch. Although others disagree on this, Nelson writes that this is likely Ein Husp, around 32 kilometers southwest of the Dead Sea. Amit identified it as Tzoar, located south of the Dead Sea, based on Mishnah Yevamot 16:7 and the Madaba map. On that same verse, and they went and dwelt among the people. I'm reading the KJV here. The Hebrew for among the people is et ha'am. Rashi identified the people as Judah's disciples. He also writes that Judah requested God to give him suitable disciples. Imagine that. The Vitus Latina has among the Amalekites. This is preferred by Fernández-Marcos, who writes that most scholars accept the amended text, considering that Amalekites has been eliminated for theological reasons. Nelson, however, writes that Amalek is an explanatory expansion intended to specify who the people in question were. Butler notes that Lindas gives reasons for rejecting the emendation, particularly the fact that the various proposals do not correspond to any surviving text. Sasson writes that the Hebrew text is, quote, reasonably understandable, end quote. On verse 18, Septuagint states that Judah did not capture the cities. Fernández-Marcos writes that this intends to harmonize with other texts such as verse 19, 3:3, Joshua 13:3. Josephus in Antiquities 5:1-8 takes a middle way between the MT and Septuagint and wrote that Judah and Simeon conquered Ashkelon and Ashdod, but not Gaza and Ekron. Fernández-Marcos, however, writes that he contradicts himself by assessing in 5:177 that the Canaanites took Ashkelon and Ekron from Judah, which implies that Ekron belongs to Judah. He notes that Lindas viewed the Septuagint as the original on literary grounds, although he finds his reasons unconvincing. Similarly, Butler and Nelson prefer the MT.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But why does he
You
why
mean
does he
people-
prefer that they did conquer it rather than they didn't?
Who? Fernández-Marcos?
Yeah. I would have thought that the Septuagint makes more sense.
He
Because
writes
it-
that he writes that M is to be preferred as the lectio difficile. I think it means like the difficult text, because it seems to be contradicted by 3:3 and Joshua 13:3. If the text of G were original, it would have had to follow verse 19. Consequently, the variant of G belongs to the beginning of the hermeneutical process. Nevertheless, the reasons adduced by Lindas to sustain the insertion of verse 18 into the prelude at this point in its original form as preserved in Septuagint are not convincing.
So yeah. Okay, interesting. Oh, by the way, interesting thing about verse 17, it mentions a place called Safat, which is a place currently, and we
Yeah,
have
Safed.
but it's probably actually comes from like a Greek city from like that was established much later on, in the north of Israel. So it's definitely not the one mentioned here. But
If there's a place called Sofat, then the obvious question is, how fat is it?
the English name is
I'm
Also,
the
very
where
English
is
name
Safed?
the English name for that city is Safed, like
Safed.
Safed. Yeah, it's known for being like a Kabbalistic center and
a lot of
like during the
Haredi, yeah.
1800s, and yeah,
It's most populated by Haredi. Yeah, it's a religious town. Yeah.
very much.
Okay.
a lot of schools
So-
there and
Yeah.
yeshivas.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 19, iron chariots. Niditch comments, The reference to the enemy's chariotry of iron is an important marker of the narrator's date. Some scholars have suggested that the author imagines wooden Bronze Age chariots fitted with iron plates for durability in the theater of war, and others argue that the iron refers to fittings or clasps. King and Steger suggest the use of iron axles. Robert Drews, however, is critical of previous suggestions, basing his argument on archaeological evidence and the laws of physics. The biblical author, in his view, must be referred either to Assyrian-style chariot wheels made of bronze or to Persian period chariots fitted with cumbersome but fear-inducing iron sides, both of which are attested. Such a detail says little about the date of the larger context and annuls to which the detail belongs, but might suggest that whoever presented the annul included imagery from a late monarchic or post-monarchic period. Comparable cases of anachronism are found in Homeric epic.
Yeah, the translation that I have says it was fitted with iron. And as you are Hebrew speakers, what would your impression of that be?
In
Direct
verse
from
19,
Hebrew.
it reads, "For kirechev barzelahem," literally, for they have iron chariot, or rechev means like chariot, or it can also
Vehicle.
mean, yeah, millstone, but here chariot seems more appropriate. Yeah, because they had iron chariots.
Yeah, so it says
Okay,
here that
so
chariots were not generally or even largely made of metal. The reference seems to be chariots made with iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be very heavy to cart around an entire
The whole
freaking
thing.
chariot, just cast iron all the way, baby. I'm fairly certain it's, the same as with the bronze and wood. You strengthen the wheels, strengthen the axles, and maybe plate the front a bit to keep you from instantly being killed.
Yeah,
So, Lawrence, you were complaining about your cat?
yes, I was. Hello, doggo.
Who's a pretty puppy?
There is also a very funny thing. So the Septuagint has Nelson notes that the Septuagint evidences a corruption of barzel, iron, into the hifil of badal, separate, translating chariots as a proper name. Rechab prevented them.
As in her?
They read. Can you please
The same name?
No. The rechev, the Septuagint has rechev as a person's name, as rechav.
Right, but is Rachav as in the prostitute?
No, the Philistine commander.
Oh, so it's a different.
Do you think that
Not
Rachav like
Rahab.
had iron chariots?
Well,
Or
no.
had commanded the valley. No, it refers to Rachav, the Philistine commander.
Well, I'm saying if the word isn't translated as chariot, then it was a name, then it would be just referring to, some person.
Yeah, but that's how
Yeah.
the Septuagint translates it, but it's basically a corruption of.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, obviously, like I covered this before. So in biblical historiography, they were not fans of chariotry at all, especially iron chariotry. But the enemies, of course, would have totally had it. So before Ahab, it is mainly foreign nations that are said to utilize chariots. So Canaanites, Philistines, Arameans, Egyptians, Cushites. Psalm 28 reflects the situation. They call on the chariots, they call on horses, but we call on the name of the Lord our God. Solomon is the first leader associated with horses and chariots in terms of their purchase. And then it goes on to say Ahab is the first Israelite king described as fighting with chariotry. He contributed 2,000 chariots to the Battle of Karkar in 853, the last great chariot battle. The mid to late 9th century kings Joram of Judah and Jehu, or Yehu, whatever, also employed chariots. Archaeological depictions attest to Israelite chariotry into the 8th century. A seal from Tel Dan, a Kuntalet Adrud Pithos painting, and Sennacherib's Lachish reliefs depicting chariots among the Assyrian items of booty. 2 fortified garrison towns with horse stables and chariotry practice grounds in both Megiddo and Lachish also date to the 8th century. The Lachish relief suggests that subsequent warfare relied on infantry of spearmen. So they obviously were, it was obviously very common at that time around to have chariotry. While knowledge of chariotry persists into post-exilic prophetic texts, beginning in the 8th century, battle chariots gradually became obsolete, in which case a late reference to chariots of iron might denote a legendary formidable enemy. And then it goes on to say, like, here's some advantages and downfalls to chariots, but that's something else. I kind of went, again, I went over the motif of chariotry in my video on it. Obviously called The Heavenly Horseman, which you all definitely watched.
I think I did, actually.
I love Heavenly Horseman.
Yeah, okay. I'll continue to verse 21, my final comment on this section. This verse is very similar to Joshua 15:63, only there it reads that the Judites did not dispossess the Jebusites. Furthermore, verse 8 states that the Judites conquered Jerusalem. Rashi writes that there was a district in Jerusalem named Jebus, which was inhabited by the sons of Abimelech, and the Judites could not oust them because of the oath which Abraham gave to Abimelech in Genesis 21, verses 23 to 24. Niditch,
and when they called on Jebus for aid, they said, "Help me, Jebus."
Yeah, exactly. Niditch notes that some take this verse as evidence that the ancient historian was aware that Jerusalem was not conquered in pre-monarchic times. Sasson writes that the modern scholars occasionally amend either the Joshua or the Judges passage to bring them into harmony. Fernández-Marcos, however, writes, the object of this verse is not to correct the information in verse 8, but to bring it into line with the information in Joshua 15:63. The major discrepancy of the tribal name is not to be solved by amending either the text of Joshua to Benjamin or to the present text to Judah, but by looking more closely at the glossator's purpose. In spite of verse 8, he knows also from Joshua 18, 16, and 28 that Jerusalem was included in the territory of Benjamin. Thus, it would have been expected to fall to Benjamin, and the point of the present verse is to say that this did not happen. That's my final comment on this.
All right, continuing on.
Yeah.
And
The
my
house
pizza hasn't even got here.
Well, we'll get there soon.
Wait, did you say P-Town? Or
Hey, you're
I thought
proud of slice if you can make it here in the next.
because I can I have a comment, but no, actually
About
that's later
pizza?
on. No.
About penis.
It's P-Town. I thought you were referring to him. Yeah, but I wanted to bring some Christian commentaries, but that's later on. Sorry.
Verse 22. The house of Joseph also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. The house of Joseph sent out spies to Bethel. The name of the city was formerly Luz. When the spies saw a man coming out of the city, they said to him, "Show us the way into the city, and we will deal kindly with you." So he showed them the way into the city, and they put the city to the sword, but they let the man and all his family go. So the man went to the land of the Hittites and built a city and named it Luz. That is its name to this day. I sorry, before I continue, I don't think we talked about this enough. The whole getting down from the horse thing before, or getting down, dismounting from the donkey thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went over like a motif exactly like that before, and then
It's the same story.
It's the
What?
same story. It's the same story with a
it's
few
the same
words
story.
changed and a few relationships.
I just noted
Right.
that.
I know, I
Like,
get
you
that,
don't
but
listen.
also here again, we are also getting another spy motif and the saving of a certain people, because like when the spies go in, right, you get the in Joshua, the woman that saves them essentially. So also gets like the same kind of thing, like we'll deal kindly with you. So get back to the text. Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shean and its villages, or Ta'anak and its villages, or the inhabitants of Dor and its villages, or the inhabitants of Ibleam and its villages, or the inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages, but the Canaanites continued to live in that land. When Israel grew strong, they put the Canaanites to... Oh, here's a good one, yeah. When Israel grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not, in fact, drive them out. And Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer, but the Canaanites lived among them in Gezer. Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron or the inhabitants of Nahalol, but the Canaanites lived among them and became subject to forced labor. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants of Akko or the inhabitants of Sidon or of Mahalab or of Akzib or of Helba or of Afik or of Rehab. But the Asherites lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh or the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and of Beth Anath became subject to forced labor for them. The Amorites pressed the Danites back into the hill country. They did not allow them to come down to the plain. The Amorites continued to live in Har-Heres, in Ayalon, and in Sha'albim. But the hand of the house of Joseph rested heavily on them, and they became subject to forced labor. The border of the Amorites ran from the ascent of Akrabim, from Selah and upward. So that was a whole bunch of stuff that I'm sure I mispronounced.
Yeah, I did fine.
Oh, okay, great. Getting better at this. I am fluent in Hebrew now. So the the inclusion here of like people that they have subjected to forced labor.
Quick question: where did anyone get the idea that the Bible is against slavery? Exactly whose ass was that pulled out of? Because that must have been the largest ass that anything was ever pulled out of.
Well,
By the way, the word where it says forced labor, some translations use tribute instead.
yeah, because
And I
the
think
Hebrews,
the word,
yeah, go
the
on.
Hebrew word must can also mean tax and tribute. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure which is more authentic. Not.
Tax is better than slavery and forced labor. I'm just remembering like snippets of, you know, 10 Commandments and Prince of Egypt and deliver us, send a shepherd to shelter us.
Yeah.
You know, with the whips and the dragging and all the drama. And I'm like, right.
Yeah, I mean, Nelson renders also as forced labor, mas here. Let me see if what does Butler render it? Yeah, he he has like a French thing, corvée labor. I don't know why he. Well, he says that
pretentious like that. Honestly,
corvée labor. But he writes the Septuagint reads tribute. It's consistent rendering of Hebrew mas, corvée labor. Each version using a different verb before the noun.
Corvée means unpaid.
Yeah, unpaid.
As in from feudal vassals.
Was that there in some of these, at least in most of them, there wasn't the inclusion of until this day. But a lot of the time, when they say that there's forced labor going on, there is the inclusion of until this day. So, I mean, I think we went over a few of these already. And there are quite a few. Yeah, that until this day in like Joshua 16:10 and 1 Kings 9:21. So yeah, they're related to Deuteronomy 20. You have the similar vocabulary, but also because the other reference to the subjection of the non-Israelites until this day is in a narrative related to Deuteronomy 20, where non-Israelites or Gibeonites surrender peaceably, albeit deceitfully, and are made forced laborers. So like there are plenty of references to, and also like the whole driving out the people of the out of the land thing, right? That is a very common occurrence, but in many Deuteronomistic texts, there is the inclusion of until this day. But in this section, for the most part, there is not an until this day inclusion.
I should also note that Sasson writes, when linked to Oved worker, mas likely means forced labor, but it is prudent to translate it in our context as tribute, as did the Targum, since this last term is broad enough to include the unwilling disposal of human labor as well as durable goods. Whatever the precise benefits, payment, or labor, God did not condone subjecting foes to a mas when they were to be dispossessed.
Right. It's
I
more or
would
less
say
saying
I
it's not
agree.
good
It's,
enough.
yeah, I would say I agree. It's prudent. I would not say it's honest.
Okay, so I'll start on 22 to 23. House of Joseph. Butler comments, Judah, with Simeon, stands in contrast to the other 10 tribes, gathered together as the inclusio created by verses 22 and 35 shows under the name of the House of Joseph. Here is clear indication that the writer of Judges faces a situation in which the two kingdoms strongly oppose one another, each seeking legitimization of its position before God and in the world of politics. The launching point is Bethel, the major cultic center of the northern kingdom, as seen in 1 Kings 12:29 and 32 to 33, with strong patriarchal roots in Genesis 12:8, 13:3, 28:19, etc., but only a subsidiary role in the conquest stories in Joshua, as seen in Joshua 7:2, 8:9, 12, sorry, 8 verses 9, 12, and 17, and 12 verses 9 and 16. Joshua used it to describe the boundary of the sons of Joseph, according to 16, 1 through 2, but allotted it to Benjamin in 18 verses 13 and 22. Judges 1, 22 to 23 represents another indication of the ironic literary attack on Saul's tribe of Benjamin, who could take neither of the important cities in the territory, Jerusalem and Bethel. Niditch continues to fight against any type of tribal polemic, seeing simply a lesson acknowledging, quote, the way in which power and control fluctuate, end quote.
I have to agree with the polemic view. I mean, the especially in a largely Deuteronomist source, you've got the pumping up David and little slights that would reflect poorly on Saul. There's all kinds of that shit that goes down.
There's also the difference in the portrayal of Judah itself in this chapter, especially here. So in Judges 1:22 through 36, the house of Joseph differs from its representation in Joshua. In Joshua 18:5, the house of Joseph serves as an overarching rubric for the north, balanced with Judah for the south. And in Joshua 17:17, the house of Joseph consists of Ephraim and Manasseh. By contrast, in this section, the house of Joseph, as reflected by its positive references in verses 22 and 35, serves as bookends for the Cisjordanian northern tribes. The house of Joseph here is distinct from the northern tribes named, including Ephraim and Manasseh, and it is provided with a positive evaluation where the northern tribes receive negative notices. Thus, the house of Joseph in Judges 1 represents a historiographical innovation relative to its attestations in Joshua, which I thought was super interesting.
Fair enough. Just a quick note to Peter. We've had a couple drive-by Christians and Muslims, but we appear to also have a geocentrist in the comments for some reason.
Oh boy, okay, that's
Yeah.
fun.
Because gravity is a myth.
A flat earther, Lilith. A flat earther.
Oh, there's also a
geocentrist.
flat earther. I didn't want to
Yes.
assume. I've only kept an eye. Our everyone in the chat, you're doing a wonderful job trolling the lunatics.
Just
Well
so you
done.
know, to the flat earther in the comments, you are incorrect, but you are biblically accurate. If that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
Also,
and that's
Jonas-
the thing I love about flat earthers, using their arguments against other creationists who just don't want to deny that much reality. And then they'll say that the Bible doesn't say that. Well, hey, look, this flat earther points out, and he agrees with me. The Bible really does say that. And then the mainstream creationist who's trying to be reasonable, because a lot of them try to be reasonable, and then they're faced with the flat earthers who end up arguing my side of the fence.
How
But don't worry, I will be.
embarrassing. How embarrassing to be
Arn,
an embarrassment to Kent Hovind.
Arn, I would have kicked them from the chat, but so we have a flat earther in chat, and we have a Muslim who thinks that the sun is a lamp. I think they might get together and make babies or something. So I'm just timing them out so they can think about
so
it.
cute. Good for
Oh,
them.
those
Yeah.
poor children.
That's cute. They can hide their flat heads in a turban.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand what the fascination is. I mean, I get if you don't understand things, and understanding things, I don't know. I guess it would be hard for some people, but to pretend that reality is wrong, and that you're one of the few, the elite, the privileged few that knows the real truth, that against everything, that absolutely everybody is involved in this huge conspiracy to prove sundowns are a thing. I don't know. It's so ridiculous. I can't understand
Arn, you got that wrong.
Why are flat earthers? They know they are full of shit. There's no way they cannot know that they're full of shit.
No, Arn, you got that wrong. The
What did I
Muslim
say
the
about
Muslim
that
just
now?
claimed that an eclipse is actually the moon splitting in two. I'm not kidding.
That's
Yeah,
what
he also said
Muhammad was referring
that
to,
when
right?
when you have a half moon, that's the moon splitting into
That too,
as well.
yeah.
However, it was supposed to be Muhammad is showing somebody a complete moon and then says, "Now look at his split."
Yeah.
That's the way the Quran tells the story. But the moon was never, and you can't have a full moon that is a moment later a half moon, and so that's just a bullshit.
Could be a partial
assertion.
eclipse, maybe.
Yeah. So this is another troll that Habibi and whoever your flat earthers, they're just wanna pretenders who have the minds of children. They don't understand things, and so they're just trying to, I don't know, be punks.
Arn, thank
Well,
you.
I just
Thank you for the
I just
mental
remind everyone-
thank you for the mental image of Muhammad mooning us. That's something I really needed on
Well,
a Tuesday.
no, I just want to remind everyone who is determined to spread God's love that if your God does love you, I hope you make him wear a condom. So maybe we can get back to the text.
Okay,
And I also do. I am still working on the video for is the flat Earth biblical thing. So I'm sure, but I'm going to say that, like, at the very outset of that video, I'm going to make it very clear the Earth is not flat. It just isn't. But it's not about that. It's not about whether or not the Earth is actually flat. It's about the biblical conception of the Earth.
There's so
I
many
feel quite
times.
picky.
There's so many times in my travels when I would have liked to have just had a flat earther there for the moment to say, "How the fuck do you explain this?" Like, there've been a number of times I'll be in an airplane at sundown, and you can see that the ground is still lit up, but then there's a moment when the ground is no longer lit up, but the clouds above it are, and then the lower clouds are not lit up, and only the higher clouds are lit. And we can't see the sun anymore. Unless you're in the airplane. So how do you explain that?
And even better, from the ground, the underside of the plane is lit up. How does that happen?
And from the ground, we've also seen when the sun goes down, I've got pictures of this, where we're at a lake or something, and you've got these big thunderhead clouds on the horizon, but only the top part of the cloud is lit. The lower parts of the clouds are all in the dark.
No.
How the hell do you do that unless the sun is dipping below the edge of the earth? There's no explanation for it. The problem is flat earthers know that they're both stupid and lying.
What did I say last episode, Aaron? What did I say? Never underestimate deliberate ignorance.
The cash and carry Angel just said that she's not a flat earther. She's just a geocentrist.
Okay.
Although she doesn't know the word.
That's why Cool Hard Logic made two separate series for why the physics is bullshit in both of those cases, for flat Earth and geocentrism separately.
I love the idea
also,
that Lawrence is going to make a flat Earth video, but he hasn't gotten around to it.
But also, that means that Peter has just lied to us. He has misrepresented somebody. Why would you do that?
Oh, that's yeah.
And anyway, I think the whole geocentrist flat Earth discussion is below this channel. Go to GE's channel.
Thank you.
It's better.
Thank you. I would agree with Isaac on that.
Okay, back to the text. Now, I still have commentary. On 24 to 26, Niditch comments, these verses contain the third of the vignettes that punctuate and elaborate the brief annals concerning conquest and disposition of the land. The north, i.e. Joseph, conquers Luz with God's aid, formulaically emphasized. Successful reconnaissance and the assistance of someone from inside the city are marked. The conventional tale of the helpful turncoat always indicates a positive war result for those whom the turncoat encounters. Compare the tales of Achab in Joshua 2 and 6, 22 to 25, and of David in 1 Samuel 30, verses 11 to 15. This tale thus serves as further proof that Judges is not an anti-Northern polemic prepared by pro-Southern writers. To the contrary, in its current setting, the tale of the founder of Luz acknowledges the way in which power and control fluctuate. The people of the man from Luz are displaced by the descendants of Joseph, and he then goes off to found a city in the land of the Hittites. Within the narrative, the important message is that one Luz is gone and another established. The vision in Judges 1, in contrast to portions of Joshua, is of fluid and shifting power, a theme reinforced by all three vignettes. On verse 27, Manasseh did not drive out the people. Rashi comments, Scripture censors them as they began betraying the Holy One, blessed is he, who commanded them, oust all those dwelling in the land, in Numbers 33-52, end quote. Amit adds that Joshua 17:12 tells that Manasseh did not drive them out because he couldn't. Here Manasseh is blamed for not driving them out. And finally, on 34, Sasson writes that the Amorites give Dan the worst treatment. The tribe does not simply fail to control its promised area, according to Joshua 19:40-46, but also it is confined to hilly areas, likely not a very productive region. He writes that what is interesting here is that there is less a desire to give a sense of Danite territory than to flesh out information about the Amorites.
So I do want to point out here. So in this commentary on Joshua from Hermenia, there are a lot of places mentioned in this section, and in at least 27 through 29. And while they do a treatment of each of these places archaeologically, I did want to point out one specifically here. So according to the excavators' chronology, from around 1100 BCE through the first half of the 9th century, Dor was part of the Phoenician world, and its historical and cultural trajectory resembled coastal Akko and Akzib more than it did Megiddo and Ta'anak. The shift from Phoenician to Israelite hegemony is evident in dramatic changes introduced in the second half of the 9th century. A new architectural orientation with monumental constructions, including the city gate with associated walls and, quote, Tafat's palace foundation, the shift in pottery repertoire from coastal forms and decoration with Aegean and Egyptian imports to highland inland types, and the cessation of maritime trade illustrate the magnitude of the change. Dor clearly became part of the Israelite cultural world only during the second half of the 9th century reign of the Omrides, and we're going to get there with King Omri, the Omride dynasty. It might either derive from an older royal archival source or perhaps been reconstructed later based on Omride period records of conquest. So, once again, completely anachronistic.
So it was known for. So Dor was known for its gate.
Wow. Yeah, it was. There you go. Congratulations, Isaac.
Yeah.
Okay,
what
I
I
got
got
another
out
comment to read. Shadow Freddy Fosbear says, Aaron, I hope one day you do a stream with the panel on just reacting to the trolls and believers in the chat.
Please don't.
Yeah, my biggest problem with that is the insincerity. This person who's arguing that they believe that the sun goes around the earth. No, you don't. You're pretending. You're pretending something stupid because it makes you feel special to pretend, to make believe something stupid. Don't be special that way. Not Special Olympian special. Be special some better way.
Arn, in all fairness, if everything works out on April 1st, So April Fool's Day, I'm going to have someone from the chat on my channel to talk, but he's less a troll than the believers we have right now. So
Okay.
that might be a thing.
Yeah, and on Monday, yeah, I won't be able to watch it. I'll be partly in a board meeting and partly in flight in transit that day. So sorry about that.
That sounds like a time for tequila shots.
Yeah, I'm more of a rum guy. So yeah.
I like rum, especially in my coffee. Just, shot.
Okay.
I just
Right,
like.
so are we ready to move on to Judges 2?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into the land, and I swore that the land that I swore to give to your ancestors, and then didn't give them. I got them right up to the river's edge and says, see what I promised you? You can't have it now. I'm sorry. Get back to the text. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? And I have also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares for you. When the angels of the Lord had spoken these things to all the Israelites, the people wept aloud, and they called that place Bochim, and they offered their sacrifices to the Lord. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnah-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After the whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they served the Baals, or however you say it. They forsook the Lord. Okay, that's a word, I guess. And
JPS as well.
Gotcha. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him.
Isn't it forsook? I'm pretty sure it's forsook.
Okay.
But instead of forsook. Forsook?
I just would like to not hear about when God is aroused.
I will not be forsook. Okay, but Lawrence wants me to pronounce I will not be forsook. Okay.
Oh my God.
Because they forsook him, and you're right, Lawrence. That's the right way to say it.
Forsook. Like soot.
Forsook. Okay. And served Baal or Baal and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of the raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves. Prostituted themselves to other gods and worshipped them. They quickly returned to their ways from their ancestors, who had been obedient to the Lord's command. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies, as long as the judge lived. For the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to their ways, the ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of their nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel and see whether they can keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their ancestors did. The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua.
So, I guess for now, my only comment is going to be on the angel of the Lord. There, we talked about this before, but angels in these earlier texts are usually just like extensions of God. They are God's messengers, which is, I'm pretty sure, what the word actually means there.
Yeah, it generally denotes a messenger. Yes.
Yeah. But then, like, in later Judaism, like once it's actually developed into full-fledged Judaism, you actually get like a hierarchy of beings that are on their own. You actually get like angels being its own thing.
Yeah.
Then they are, I mean, they're not disconnected from God, but they're not just manifestations of God. They are their own beings. Like in much later texts, you like in like the Enochian books, for example, you get hierarchies of angels, and it gets really fucking annoying too. Like in Third Enoch, I think, might be Second Enoch, they have one angel bowing down to its to the angel that is above it, and then that angel bowing down to the angels that's above it, and then so on and so forth for like 5 pages. It's actually nuts, and they each have their own little job. Until eventually you get to God. But at this point in time, they are not that yet.
So there's middle management in the choir of angels.
Yes, eventually.
Pretty much, yeah.
At this point, not quite, but eventually, yes. It gets insane.
I just want to point out on a different track, although, God is sort of, the angels are God's hand puppets, I guess you could say, in the world. But have you noticed, and well, I know you noticed, Aaron, but really think about how frequently God equates worship with sex. It's really kind of creepy, more than kind of. And
how they prostitute themselves for
other
gods?
They prostitute themselves to other gods. But also, I mean, that's not the only time he says something of that nature.
Yeah, we said that before.
Yeah, and they're said to have committed adultery with other gods. The argument has been made by various theologians of various groups that Song of Solomon is really about the relationship between the believers and God. It's not. It's about sex. But it's become this really awkward, weird thing, and the way that it ends up, you end up describing. If you listen to this like hymns and worship songs, it's really creepy. I'm sorry, it's really, really creepy.
I forgot to mention. I had an ancient Christian commentary by Gregory the Great on the 129 taxation of the.
Also known as, is that Gregory? Is that Gregory of Nyssa or Gregory Nazianzus? Which one is that? He's one of those.
I think of the Nyssa.
Nyssa. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's he does
Oh no! It's Pope Gregory the First, not Gregory of Nyssa. Okay.
Never mind then.
So he says, where was it? Yes, he says, taxation of the Canaanites signifies the imperfection of our life, which, under scrutiny of self-examination, leads to humility. Thank you, Greg. Okay, now to my commentary. On verse 1, the angel of the Lord, in Hebrew, Malach Yehovah. The word malach generally denotes a messenger, either an angel, a prophet, as in Isaiah 42:19, 44:26, and 2 Chronicles 36:15, or a priest, according to Malachi 2:7. While the Septuagint, Vulgate, and Peshitta read angel, Chazal in Leviticus Rabbah 1:1 wrote that the malach here refers to a prophet, specifically Phineas, son of Eleazar. This reading is attested in the Targum, quote, the prophet by the commission from before the Lord, end quote, and traditional commentators. Gersonides explains that malach can't refer to an angel because it's not possible for an angel to speak with all the Israelites. And I have
Oh,
no
wait,
idea
wait.
how.
I just want
Yeah.
to make sure. Wait, it's not possible for an angel to speak to, because that's how is it possible for 1,000 angels to dance on the head of a pin?
That's apocryphal, actually. That was never
I'm just
really an
I'm just
argument
wondering,
from
how do we
biblical.
determine what it's possible for an angel to do?
I
Yeah,
don't
but
see
also
any
it's like
reason
it's
he
not.
couldn't blow up to giant proportions and make a big dramatic statement. I mean, God is kind of a drama queen.
Wait, so it's impossible for an angel to talk to all of the people, but for a person it is possible?
I have no idea how he got to that conclusion, honestly. I mean, maybe it's like he's because Gasonides is a very rationalist person, so maybe it's
Mm.
like angels can't really do that.
Well,
Yeah,
it just strikes me as like, who would win in a fight, an angel or Superman?
yes. So on
Goku.
Bochim, so on the word Bochim, the word means weepers or crying ones in Hebrew, and the Septuagint has weeping. The etymology of this place is given in verses 4-5. Sasson notes that many scholars are not satisfied with, quote, such a folk etymology, end quote, and connect Bochim with a tree that shares its Semitic roots, such as Alon Bachut, allegedly weeping oak, where Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, is buried, according to Genesis 35:8, or Baka trees, perhaps balsam, of 2 Samuel 5, verses 23 and 24. Septuagint adds, and to Bethel and to the house of Israel, which commentators take as an explanatory gloss to clarify Bochim's location. Amit notes that the connection between Gilgal and Bethel appears in other texts, such as Hosea 4:15 and Amos 4:4, and writes that the angel going from Gilgal, a well-known worshipping site, to Bochim, which was used as a later place of assembly, hints to a known cultic center, which is probably Bethel. She further writes, it seems, therefore, that Bethel is used here as background to hear God's reproof towards breaking the oath, Brit, and summarizing the non-inheritance sins of the northern tribes. This aligns with the goals of the Judite editing of Judges, casting guilt at the kingdom of Israel. It is only natural that Bethel, associated with the calf worshipping in 1 Kings 12:29 and 2 Kings 10:29, was chosen to be the first site to hear the reproof on the oath's violation. The notion is echoed in Hosea 4:15, quote, if you are a lecher, Israel, let not Judah incur guilt. Do not come to Gilgal, do not make pilgrimages to Beth Aven, i.e. Bethel, and do not swear by the Lord. On I brought you up out of Egypt, Hebrew Bible reads, I will bring you up out of Egypt. We would have expected to read a past tense, he'eleti, but we have a future tense, a'ale, interestingly enough, which is attested throughout this verse. The past tense reading is attested by the early translations as well. Or, yeah, sorry, the past reading is in by the early translations. Rashi comments, this was my original intent to take you up from Egypt, and I did so with the stipulation that my enemies be ousted, end quote. Kimchi, Ibn Kaspi, and Abravanel note that future in past language, quote unquote, is attested in other passages, such as Job 1:5. Sasson comments, most translations simply ignore the problem and translate with a past tense, perhaps encouraged by claims that we are dealing with an unusual use of the imperfect. Especially in 19th century scholarship, there were many proposals to expand to expand for clarity or to amend the form as we have it. However, this is not necessary, for, as in many Semitic languages, the imperfect, especially in the first person, can be used to express a wish or intention that has carried from a moment distant in the past.
So the imperfect, yes, but I'm not sure about, because you said this is a future, right?
Yeah, in the Masoretic text, it's in the future reading.
Interesting.
Ale. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, it expresses like, yeah, I guess it could be like a hope or a wish. I've seen that in Greek text as well. So yeah, while I think the only other time it occurs like this is in Exodus, right? in Exodus 3:17. They use the same expression with the first person long form of the prefix. So I will bring you up. The reference to the Egypt tradition here reinforces the present situation of the Israelites, that Yahweh had saved them from Egypt, and thus implies that Yahweh will not save them now. This divine speech addresses the Israelites as a whole, using the plural you, returning to the narrative perspective of Israel rather than to the tribes with their individual stories. Yeah, that is interesting, though, because the next section is I will never break my covenant. Yeah.
I think I asked Simone about this actually, and she was also baffled.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah. Now on verse 3, traps. Hebrew it's tzidim. The exact meaning of this word is unclear. Septuagint has causes of oppression, Vulgate and Targum enemies or oppressors, reading tsarim instead of tzidim, or tzirim. Peshita has they will be vanity for you. Rashi and Kara read tzidim as flanks, and so they read they will harass your flanks with bandits and troops, pillaging and plundering. Likewise, KJV, Butler, and Nelson read sides. Kimchi connects it with the word tzninim, found in Numbers 33:55 and Joshua 23:13, which refers to harassment by thorns. He notes that some, like Ibn Janach, read tzedim from tzud, to hunt or snare. Likewise, Niditch and Smith and Bloch-Smith render traps.
You can
Now,
basically create razor wire out of some of those big nasty thorns you get in the desert. So I can see the analog there.
Now on verse 6, after Joshua had dismissed the people, Rashi comments, this incident had taken place previously, but as scripture intends to relate that they acted wickedly in verse 11, it begins with the given statement, end quote. Butler notes that verse 6 uses the exact phrasing of Joshua 24:28, with imported additions. The Israelites went and took possession of the land. He writes that this is a refinement of Joshua 21:43, quote, Yahweh gave to Israel all the land which he had promised to give to the fathers, and they possessed it and lived in it, end quote. He further writes, the book of Joshua emphasizes the greatness of its obedient leader and the fullness of the divine faithfulness. The book of Judges shows what happens to a people without leadership, a people after Joshua dies. They lose all God's gifts because they choose to coexist with the enemy and the enemy's gods, rather than obey the God of promises and covenant. The faithful God must deal with an unfaithful people. Joshua can talk of having rest on all sides. Judges can only talk of a people living amid the enemies.
Yeah, so on the stuff from 2:1 through 5, so in context, Judges 2:1 through 5 was composed and placed after Judges 1 to function as an interpretive commentary and coda to the events related in that chapter. This passage offers a religious explanation for the ongoing presence of the land's prior inhabitants as detailed in Judges 1 and especially in 1:22 through 36. While Judges 1 provides a religious reason for the overall victories of Judah and the house of Joseph, no religious explanation is provided for the other tribes' lack of complete success in the rest of the chapter. And this section would fill that gap. And then they go on to say here that the background has been debated. Some scholars take this passage as Deuteronomistic in view of some purportedly Deuteronomistic verbiage, and sometimes on the assumption that the parallel passage in Exodus 23:20 through 33 is Deuteronomistic as well. However, he goes on to say that the subunit also shows an apparent dependence on other passages, including chapter 1, suggestive of a post-Deuteronomistic edition. As noted, 2:1b suggests a citation of Exodus 3:17. In view of this apparent citation and the themes of 2:1 through 5 as a whole, this passage ties together the Tetrarch and the historical books, according to Erard Bloom, followed by Christoph Levin. While it is not quite clear that whole collections of books are in the purview of 2:1 through 5, the thematic horizons of the passage certainly extend back to the Exodus and further to the settlement. What is additionally remarkable is that the text cited by the angel is not taken verbatim from a prior context. While it shows a decided connection with Exodus 23:20 through 33, 23, 20 through 33, the speech appears to conflate and modify a number of related speeches. So, yeah, there are a lot of questions surrounding just that section.
Yeah, I should note that Nelson writes that Judges 2 verses 1 to 5 is closely related in topic, vocabulary, and genre to the equally isolated 6 verses 7 to 10, and both units probably originated with the later reviser of DH.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Another comment, this one from Matthew K, says, I will never break my covenant, which equates to, I have made a new covenant that I break my old covenant with you.
Okay, so on verse 10, Nelson comments, Judges 2 verses 6 to 9 parallels Joshua 24, 28 to 31, but in the sequence, Joshua 24 verses 28, 31, 29, 30, and then continues with Judges 2:10 to advance the story. Here, the obedient Joshua generation is not the end of the story as it is in Joshua 24:31. Judges 2:10 goes a step beyond in order to introduce the subsequent disobedient generation. The sequence of each presentation is appropriate to its location, either at the end of Joshua's mostly successful career or at the beginning of the crises of the Judges period. The horizon of the Joshua version is Joshua's generation and not the future, so it is appropriate that the positive evaluation of Joshua 24:31 is the concluding verse there. In the Judges presentation, there is a sharp contrast between the first generation that had seen Yahweh's actions, Judges 2:7 contrasts Joshua 24:31 new, and the next generation that did not know them in Judges 2:10. Is there a hint of blame directed at the Joshua generation for not communicating what they had seen to their children? The evocation in Judges 2 verses 6 to 10 of the situation at the end of Joshua's career strongly indicates that the DH version of Judges began with Judges 2:6, and that Judges 1 to 2 to 5 was subsequently added as a supplement to the secondary introduction to Judges represented by chapter 1. On verse 11, served the Baals. Hebrew for Baals is Baalim. Niditch notes that Baal, meaning master in Northwest Semitic languages, refers to the dying and rising hero deity of the Canaanite pantheon, who shares qualities of storm god and warrior with Yahweh. Idols are generalized as Baals. Butler writes that the Baalim represent the various manifestations of Baal in the various Canaanite worship sites. Since the northern tribes failed to evict and eliminate the Canaanites, the Israelites serve Baal in every part of the country.
And okay, so just so everyone knows for context, I've cited him before, but Mark S. Smith, one of the authors for this commentary, he has done so much work on the
And Elizabeth
connection between
and Bloch-Smith as well.
myth.
His wife as well contributed.
Sure, true. So I mean, I've only read like his specific work on it. So it's actually incredible. So he is a Catholic, by the way, but he does some of the best work in this field. Like, it's awesome. It's so good. So if anyone's interested, really good book by him. It's called The Early History of God. It's so good. So he references like some lists where, you know, the Baals appear collectively in two Ugaritic god lists and in two related rituals. In the god list, these Baals follow the name of the god Baal. Dennis Pardee characterizes these Baalim in the god lists as another manifestation of Baal. The use of Baals in the ritual text might suggest devotion to multiple Baals in some form, perhaps as manifested in different locations within the city of Ugarit. The notion of the Baals as manifestations of the god Baal, perhaps at different locales, might underlie the usage in Hosea. Local manifestations of major deities are exemplified also by the expression Yahweh of Teman and Yahweh of Samaria, attested in Hebrew inscriptions from Kuntalet Ajrud. In contrast to the Ugaritic usage, the biblical cases are polemical and generic. In Judges, the Baals function as an ideologically charged term designed both to name and to combat worship of deities other than Yahweh. It does not refer to only one God, and Tomer kind of handled the rest of that one. But yeah, his work on this has been actually incredible. So I definitely suggest that.
Can you give me a quick summary? How can there be multiple Baals?
Oh, okay. So in this is a thing that happens in polytheistic religions all the time, everywhere. So you have local manifestations of one deity. So like in one place, their primary purpose or power could be like healing. In another place, it could be like some familial issue. In another place, it could be something else entirely. So like that's why in Greece, for example, you get different epithets for Zeus. Like there's like a Zeus that's relating to victory. There's a Zeus relating to war. A Zeus relating to armor. These are different local manifestations of the same god. You have to kind of get yourself out of that mindset of like, oh, this one god is one character, because that's not how polytheistic religions back in the day viewed it. They viewed them as local just singular manifestations of one deity. And the thing is, this changes from time and place, and it's very dynamic. And I think that's one of the things that never gets like covered in like, let's say, like a Greek mythology course, because mythology courses, like they teach you like the story, right? But it doesn't teach you about the actual practice of these religions. And that is where the importance of having local manifestations is far more important.
You know what it reminds me of? In Catholicism, every time someone has a vision of the Virgin Mary, there'll be an Our Lady of. So you have Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Fatima, Our Lady
I
of blah,
actually
blah, blah.
referenced this later on.
Oh, there you go. Well, and when Pope John Paul II was shot, he said a maternal hand guided the bullet to miss his, arteries. And then it
As
was,
opposed to
Our Lady.
stopping the bullet. Wonder Woman could stop the bullet.
Yes, well, God is a really shitty superhero. And yeah, there's another similarity. How many different worlds does Batman have? I think your video is frozen, Aaron.
Yeah, it is.
You've got the 616, the new 52, the 813. What I don't know how many universes they have going around at this point, but it feels a bit like that.
I got another comment to read. Squimbly offers $19.99 and says, "Aaron, you genuinely saved my life. Thank you for helping me helping to bring me out of my shackles and everything else you do." Thank you very much for that. Thank you sincerely for that. All right, I'm going to refresh my screen, see if I get my camera back on. You guys continue.
Okay, so about the Ashtoreths in verse 13, Hebrew is Ashtarot, the plural of Ashtoret. As Niditch notes, Ashtoreth is the Canaanite goddess of fertility and war, and is generally associated with Baal. Amit notes that the vocalization Ashtoret is on the same weight as Boshet, shame, and is derogatory. She writes that from the phrase the alien gods and the Ashtaroth in 1 Samuel 7:3, we can deduce that the plural form represents multiple goddesses in Israelite worship, compare Judges 10:6, much like the plural form for Baals, which represents different gods. And I like that Alexandrinus has the she-Baal for, I think it's the Baal, the Baalim. Interestingly enough.
Well, you need a gender flip ball. I mean, really, the what is it? The fan fiction canon is not complete without that trope.
I mean, I think it seems like the ancient Israelites did like the ballet. So.
Oh, okay. On verse 14, raiders in Hebrew it's shosim, or yeah, is it? It's a bit hard to read the nikud there. Yeah, shosim. Okay, so either from the root shin samech hey or shin samech samech, to spoil or plunder. The shosim are described as plundering vayashu, the Israelites. Sasson comments, the shosim seems to designate pirate raiders, working beyond the control of organized state powers in 2 Kings 17:20. Their work is particularly cruel as it must be accomplished stealthily, quickly, and indiscriminately to avoid retaliation. Several scholars have tried to associate with them the Shasu or Shosu of Egyptian New Kingdom and Empire records, likely referring to a social class rather than an ethnic entity. The Shasu operated in southern Palestine across the Jordan, behaving much like the Habirus, often forcefully confronting Egypt. Much interest was focused on Egyptian columns of Soleb, at Soleb, Amenhotep III, and Amara, Seti, or Ramesses II, in which Shasu elements are attached to 6 areas, among them Seir. Another place, Yahoo, is connected with the Hebrew god, and so the Shasus were also incongruously associated with the formative Israel. On verse 17, prostituted themselves to other gods. Hebrew for prostituted is znu or zanu, from the root zainun hey, which means to prostitute. The motif of prostituting towards other gods is also found in other passages such as Exodus 34:15, Leviticus 25, and Deuteronomy 31:16.
I swear, religion does not lead to coherence in anything. It just, everything is excuses on excuses, and just the whole concept gets incoherent.
And my final comment on this chapter, 20 to 23, Amit notes that verses 20 to 23 and 3 verses 1 to 4 contain 3 answers to the question, why was the conquest not completed during Josiah's period, and why are there still Gentiles in the land? The reasons given are 1. The sins of Israel during the Judges period, verses 20 to 21. 2. Testing Israel to see if they are loyal to God, in verses 22 to 23 and 3:4. 3. Training Israel militarily, in 3 verses 1 to 3. And she writes that these answers do not go in line against. She writes that these answers. Sorry about that. These answers do not go in line with the answer in 2 verses 1 through 5, which states that the Gentiles remained as punishment for breaking the covenant. Moreover, we would have expected that the punishment for the sins during the Judges period would be harsher, since Israel was already punished with the remaining Gentiles after the covenant breaking during the Elders period. These answers are also contradictory. For example, according to verses 1 through 5 and 20 to 21, the Gentiles staying in the land is seen as a punishment. But while verses 1 through 5 explain it because of Israel's neglect during the Elders period, verses 20 to 21 explain that this is due to Israel's repeated sins during the Judges period. Based on this, she writes, the existence of 4 answers which do not complement each other, and some even contradict one another, led most scholars to the conclusion of multiple authors, or a pile of edits to this unit. However, there were some scholars like Kaufmann who claimed that the section is uniform, and while it is composed of several questions with several answers, this does not necessarily lead to multiple authors. These scholars, however, ignore the fact that uniformity is dependent on the contents and their arrangements. Even if we assume that we shouldn't derive multiple authors from multiple answers, there's no doubt that multiple answers point to an issue for which no satisfactory answer was given throughout the generations. Therefore, this section 220 and 34, 220 through 34, should be seen as a parenthesis or an appendix, which contains 3 more answers to 2 verses 1 through 5 for the issue of the remaining Gentiles. We can hypothesize that the post-Deuteronomic editor, who was responsible for conjoining or non-omitting of this section to where it is, was aware of the fact that not all problems have a unique solution. That's it for my commentary on this chapter.
All right.
Arn,
Oh, unless I
Arn, I didn't want to put it up on the screen, but the guy who didn't understand evolution, he has a great idea. He thinks you should read the Old Testament. Maybe that's an idea for a show or something.
The people in our chat cannot be this fucking stupid.
They can, apparently.
Yes, they are.
You see why I doubt? I don't know why would you want to pretend to be dumb?
I don't have an idea.
I've noticed all my life that some people really, really love to piss off people who are smarter than them because it makes them feel like they have power over them. It's usually the type of childhood bullies that are really, really stupid and don't want to deal with it. So, they insult the smart kid and bully them.
And they've already heard us explain why the King James Version is among the least what is it, reliable? You can't even say that one's reliable. For as far as the translation, they've already heard us say all the things that are wrong with the KJV. So of course that's the one they promote, right? Because they're being irritant, they are being stupid, they're being dishonest. Why would you want to be stupid and dishonest? In what way does that make you feel good about yourself?
Well, the thing is, they promote it because of the propaganda campaign that went along with the King James. That it says that it's based. This is the text that we have received from from fathers, right? So it's like it gives you like this inherent traditional line of textual perfection, essentially. So it's kind of it goes with the assumption that nobody messed up along the way, which is false. We already know that it's false. So so it came with that campaign, but I believe in the very first version, it also said that it was like open to future revision or something like that. So it was essentially a propaganda campaign when you're trying to sell the KJV. But like when initially,
I'm constantly wrestling with people who want to make believe things that they know are not true. I've had people admit to me that what they believe is not true, but they want to believe it anyway because it makes them feel all squishy inside somehow.
Well, the thing with the KJV,
how the fuck?
The thing with the KJV is, it does have historical importance, right?
Yeah.
But that and like a lot of the time it kind of boils down to like, oh well, it's such a beautiful like text or whatever, and we got so many like phrases out of it or whatever, like salt of the earth and shit like that. Which true, but it doesn't mean it's a better translation. They believe that the other ones have been corrupted or whatever, but it's like really it's just people trying to do their due diligence and figure out what was possibly the most probable original reading. So it's people.
The only reason that anybody likes the KJV is because we have this weird thing about English. People who only know one language. Fortunately for English speakers, it's the most popular language. Okay, but the other thing is that the only reason that people like the KJV is because it reminds them of fucking Shakespeare, who wrote nothing of the King James.
Yeah? And if God had any sense, he would have had Shakespeare write his Bible because Shakespeare's a better author than him.
Is he though? I always thought he was kind of a hack.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, first of all, dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow. Second of all, even if he was, he's still a better author than Jehovah. Come on.
I think he tried freelancing Dante, but that didn't turn out very well.
He did, get the Satan chowing down on the traitors while his body was frozen at the center of hell. That's always fun.
He ended up making the enemy more popular.
No, I understand.
No, you're thinking of Milton, Paradise Lost, not Dante.
Okay. Often conflated and confused, those two. Funny thing.
Yeah, there was also a jihadist Catholist in the comments complaining that we're attacking him.
Oh, princess.
Okay, I don't know about all that. But...
He was a Catholic who calls himself a crusader, and he was like, why are you attacking us? We're the biggest victims.
Yeah, there was also a Muslim in chat making threats. That's one I reported and banned.
Okay. So I understand that this is a later in the evening show. This is not the normal, we normally do on Saturdays at 11 a.m. my time, which is, noon Eastern. And of course, in the afternoon for Europeans and people in the Middle East. Now it's much later. Dare we try to go to another chapter?
Well, here's the thing. I need to eat. And I also have like a lot of stuff to get done this week. And my week went from fairly open to fairly closed real quick this week. So as much time as I can get to actually get through some homework would be.
Well, no worries. I am so very happy that you're on this show.
Well, before
it's nice doing this whole Bible reading over again.
Yeah, before we're done, I have some ancient Christian commentary to wrap up with.
All right.
So, Jerome wrote that the Valley of Tears, Bochim, is understood allegorically as this world, which is a place of repentance, weeping, and labor for one's heavenly crown.
Did you say this world?
This world, Aaron.
Oh, by the way, YouTube has 2 full-length animated Discworld movies, Weird Sisters and Soul Music. They're pretty good. So
I've seen
Yeah.
both of the movies on about Discord. You talk about Terry Pratchett.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen both of those on YouTube, and
Yeah.
recommended.
And origin now, here he is. The death of Joshua, who is a type of Christ, is recorded in order to indicate that Jesus may be either alive or dead in other persons.
Wait, what?
Yes, that's origin for you.
Joshua, who, if he existed, would never have heard of Jesus.
No.
And his story is all about Schrodinger's Jesus.
Christ. Okay, so Christ is just the Greek word for Messiah. It means anointed. That's all that means. Like, in fact,
Okay.
in the
And Joshua
Greek,
was a Messiah in that sense.
yeah,
I mean, like Jesus is just a version of Joshua, and Christ is just is Messiah, which means anointed. So you could just call him like Oily Josh, and it would mean the same thing.
Oily Josh.
And the thing is, funny part is in I believe it's Isaiah 45:1 in the Greek version, Cyrus is called the Christ.
Because he
Oh,
was.
and
But
final comment. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just
Go
going
on.
to say for Christians, the type of Christ is, any prophetic character is seen as, having some characteristic or some attribute of Christ that helps you to look forward and see him. It's not quite as ditzy as P-Town made it. It's, it's poetic reading, and you're looking ahead, and the good attributes of God are foreshadowing of Christ to the believer who's looking retrospectively. But
So just for
And-
clarification, then, I'm sorry, Tomer, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a final comment from Origin again, who writes, those who worship Baal in former times represents those in the present who, bound by their sins, bend their knees, quote unquote, to the devil. There we go.
Oh, I forgot my pentagram.
All right.
Oh,
So,
Satan.
yeah, I want to clarify. Are we meeting again next Tuesday?
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
But we're
works.
not doing a Saturday show.
No.
We're not doing
Yeah,
this
it's Easter.
Saturday.
This
It's
Saturday.
Easter.
Yeah.
It's Easter. We can't be working on Easter.
Wait.
I'm going to
Okay.
be at an atheist convention on Easter Sunday.
I'm giving everyone homework. This is a sacred weekend. You are to go home and find some way to blaspheme and violate God's law. It could be anything. Just be inventive. There's all of
Yeah.
Leviticus. Pick something.
So
I'm gonna go to the
I'll,
woods and collect some wood.
So next week,
Only
next
on the
week, then,
Sabbath.
will we be doing 2 shows? Is that the?
Well, we're doing this Tuesday, and then we're going to be doing a week from today, and then we would be resuming
And
our
then
regular
back to
schedule the
Saturday.
next Saturday, or the following Saturday.
Wait.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's
wait,
two
so
shows.
The Tuesday would be a week from today.
That's two
Yes.
shows.
Okay, so it would be on both Tuesday and Saturday. Is what I'm asking.
If that's what you want to do.
No, because that's because right now I can only really handle 1 show a week.
Okay. So we don't do April 2nd. You want to wait till April 6th.
So we can do no, we can
It's
do
April 6th.
April, because you said so we can't do this this upcoming Saturday on the 30th. So I can
Right.
I can do either I can either do April 2nd or Saturday the 6th. Either one. I'm cool
Let's
with,
do-
but I can't be doing both.
Okay. Well, we'll do this. We'll do Saturday the 6th then.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll go back
Fine
to
by
our
me.
regular schedule.
Fine by me.
On you,
Thank you much for everyone.
Are-
We've got another comment.
yeah, got one more.
Yeah. The unlucky legume, who I'm going to meet and have dinner with this weekend,
Ooh.
Ooh.
offers $20 and says, "Thanks for another great stream. Chat was so unhinged and distracting that I didn't hear a word, but I'm sure it was wonderful." Yeah, we had an overflow of stupid in our chat today.
Yeah.
when we're looking down, we're not ignoring the speaker. We're frequently just checking the chat.
Yeah,
but I am
and-
still listening to the speaker. Don't worry, it's ADD.
Yeah,
I'm always listening.
And somebody called me a sanctimonious chipmunk, or at least how I sounded like. I have no idea what it means.
That's
This guy's very.
that's a
he's
little
bit-
funny.
he goes just over the edge of being going from like sassy to insulting, but it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. What I would love to see in a believer is sincerity. The people who proclaim to have the absolute truth and to be all about truth and all that shit always only ever lie about everything.
Okay.
And that gets irritating.
At least the
Gonna
ones
find
we had
sincerity
today.
in believers.
At
You
least
are not likely to find sincerity in internet believers, okay? Your ratio of sincerity goes way the fuck down when you throw in a keyword.
I'm dealing with creationist apologists. I
Oh,
will
God, no.
never see sincerity.
There's no sincerity there. No, just
None.
straight up bullshit 24/7. Just double fisting machine guns, one under each arm. Absolute, rapid fire bullshit. That's, yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you next Saturday on the 6th.
And make sure to join the
Bye-bye,
Discord.
everybody. Yeah, join the Discord. That's the most important thing.